a little bit about me before I start. I am so ready for this message. I'm telling you, this is a raw message. This is a real message. This is something I asked the Lord. I said, God, what do you want me to talk about? And the Lord said, I want you to be real vulnerable. And I was like, wonderful. Because I told him before, it's a heart posture. I said, God, I already lived it. So if someone else is living it, let's get through it together. So anything that you want me to share, I'm willing to do it. And so there's a couple things he told me, I'm not going to tell you to share it until you're up there. And I was like, great. Wonderful. But before we jump into the message, I'm just going to, a little bit about me. I'm 27. I look 18. That's okay. It'll be great when I'm like 80. My family, I have a couple pictures. These are my siblings. I love them dearly. Actually, there's one that's cut off. I don't know where he is. Oh, wait. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. No, they're all there. Just doesn't look like a lot. Okay, so Josh is up front. He's the shortest. He's also the oldest, which, usually happens. So Josh is 34, and then jump over to me. I'm 27. Caleb is in the back. He's the tallest guy back there. He is 26. Josiah over here is 25. Drop down to my sister Anna is 24. Gabe is turning 22 on the edge over here. And then the blondie next to me is Isaiah, and he is 20. We are a family of 7, 5 boys and 2 girls, which Hannah actually has 5 girls and 2 boys. So that's very interesting. I was like, I am so glad to have more brothers than sisters. My goodness, 2 is enough. But I love them a lot. We all have our own personalities. We're all very loud. If I would have put up a video up here, it would have been all of us screaming at each other, but it was because we were having a ball. We're like fighting, but it's so fun. My parents, I have a picture. There's my parents. So my mom is half black, hence the hair. I am naturally blonde, though. Everybody asks. Yes, blonde. And she actually used to get judged. And when she'd walk into Walmart, people would be like looking at her all weird because she bleached blonde. She bleached her daughter's hair. No, it was real. And my dad here, they're pastors. And my dad actually passed away in 2020. And so that was super sudden, super unexpected. He was my best friend in the whole world. And so that was a raw occurrence. We'll probably talk about him some more. But these are my parents, and, my mom has jumped in, and she's leading the church now, and so it's an amazing thing, and she's doing a wonderful job. I love them a lot. There's that last picture. I need to give credit to Lisa, wherever it's the one. Yep, right there. Lisa is connected to Josh here. They are dating, and so Lisa will probably watch this, so I need to say it. She's not my sister yet. Okay, so we're waiting. Anyways, let's jump into the message. I want to pray really quick, though, and because I felt like, I was in the back while we were worshiping. I said, God, I really, I can feel it in my spirit that this is a message to bring today, and it's a message for all of us in a different way. This, any message that someone gives you can touch your heart, but I feel like the Lord is really wanting to do something. And then Zeke, when you were, speaking during our open time, you just nailed it on the head, man. I was like, yes, let's do this. So really quick, if you can put your hand on your heart, I am just going to, all we're doing is we're saying, I want to hear from you, Lord, and I'm going to pray just a block be broken off so that you can receive it, because I feel like the enemy wants to knock something out today, and we're not going to let him. So God, I thank you so much for who you are, and as our hand is on our heart, we say nothing is going to hinder this message. I break the hold of the enemy to block, to hinder, kill, steal, destroy, to keep from. I just pray open ears, open hearts, open eyes, and ready to receive. In Jesus' name, God, speak through me. Holy Spirit, I couldn't do this without you. It's all you anyways. Thank you for being here. We invite your presence into this room, and we pray for breakthrough today. In Jesus' name, amen. All right, so I call this The Waiting Season is the title of this message. I had something catchier, but it wasn't really running. I was like, all right, Lord, we'll stick with the waiting season. Waiting and waiting are different. So if I say, we hear a lot of Christians say we're in a waiting season. We're waiting on God. But I don't know. I'm not really, I feel like the Lord was challenging. He's like, Abby, I don't want you to wait for me. He's like, I still want you to be in action while you're waiting. And that is actually the definition with waiting. It's to push through and trudge through water and getting to the goal. So you can still know that God is there, but you're still moving. So we're going to talk about, I got the email yesterday, or the text message yesterday about, a loss in our church. And I didn't even really know him that well, but my heart is hurting, and it's hurting for you guys. And, life happens. Like these are things that happen to us. And, some people might say like, oh, why does God let bad things happen to good people? Well, this is life. And, like someone might say, man, this is a really downer point of view. And I said, no. I said, because life happens. My dad, he got diagnosed with cancer. And then while I was in high school, he ended up beating it, and he was declared cancer-free for 8 years. And then all of a sudden, he wasn't feeling well. He started losing weight. He was like, hey, guys, he said, he sat us down on vacation and said, I have cancer again. He said, but the doctor caught it really early, so we have nothing to worry about. And so we were like, okay, cool. That was in July. By that next month, he'd had a terrible sinus infection, and it started getting worse, but the doctor just kept saying, oh, it's nothing. It's not related to your cancer. Like, it's okay, Rod. And then he's like, literally he's pounding down ibuprofen, his heart, everything. And they're like, oh, it's not related to your cancer. It's okay. Like, you just have a sinus infection. So then, one day, my dad and I talked every day. I called him, and he said, hey, Abby. He's like, your mom's going to take me to the hospital really quick. He's like, my heart's hurting. He's like, but I'll talk to you after I get out. And I was like, okay, sounds good. And he was dead in 3 days. It was the craziest thing. He had just did marriage counseling a couple days before that. 2 weeks before he died, he was helping me move out of a 3-story building. It's insane the way that life happens. It's crazy the way that loss can happen in an instant. It's crazy the way that rejection can change the trajectory of our lives in a second. The way that fear and anxiety can literally hinder healing and can hinder us from moving forward. You guys, life happens. But it's the way that we manage our mind. It's the way that we manage. What are we seeing? I'm calling them lenses today. If I put on lenses, like right now, I need glasses. Obviously, as I'm looking at your faces, and they're a little hazy, okay? But I put on my lenses to see you clearly. But there's a lot of different lenses, and some lenses that I am not supposed to be carrying and wearing are actually going to make things worse. Do you get where I'm going? Are you tracking with me? We're going to talk about lenses that actually change the trajectory in a negative way. And then I want to give you some practicals on how do we take those lenses off. Because if we need lenses, and honestly, we will always need lenses, but how do we take the negative lenses off, and how do we obtain the lenses that we need? So if you're willing, we're going to go there. So a lot of questions that we ask, and I'm sure, I have dealt with, I'm telling you, like the last 3 years have been the hardest years of my entire life. We're going to talk about it a little bit in here, but my dad died October 7th of 2020, and I didn't realize how attached to him I was. And so once he died, it felt like I couldn't live anymore. And I know that you guys have felt things like that. Something is just too hard to bear. It's too hard. So I ended up, I couldn't work. I got to the point of so depressed that I would lay in my bed and beg God to kill me. I was just begging him to let me die. But I had an 8-year stomach condition that was also killing me. The doctors had told me right before my dad died that if I lost any more weight, I was going to be on feeding tubes in the hospital. But they also had told me that they couldn't help me anymore because I was perfectly healthy and had nothing wrong with me. They couldn't find what was causing the stomach issues and the weight loss. And so it was a lost cause. I remember leaving that doctor's office and thinking, God, I'm going to die, so just kill me. Just let me die. Have any of you been there where you're like, God, I'm so done. I'm so done. I can't do this anymore. There's a point where you get in your life and you wonder, what is happening? You know, there's instant things that happen and it's like a snap of a finger, and then all of a sudden our life is in chaos. So be praying for Julie, because that is a snap of the finger life change. There was no preparation. There was no, your husband is sick. This was a snap of the finger life change. Be praying for Julie, even with this message, what lens she puts on. And a lot of times, it looks like we're putting on the right lens. But there's a lot of things that happen over time that get to the point where we've gotten to this place. You know, I can, it's like autopilot driving. I saw this video recently, and, you know, the guy's like, he's just driving, and he's like looking around. And then it's like when you all of a sudden realize you're driving, and then you like, oh gosh. That's kind of what it's like with pain and sorrow and hurts. When we put on these other lenses, it's like we're driving. We get in the car, we know we're driving, but then wherever we ended up, we're like, how did I get here? Like, I don't even remember driving. You know what I'm saying? So these are the kinds of things that I want to talk about. How did I get here? How did it get to this point? Why? I know that my dad died and that caused grief, but how did I get to the point where I wanted to die? And then it started getting worse. Then I started hearing voices telling me that it would just be easier if I died. Then I started agreeing, oh my gosh, it would. I wouldn't have to feel this. This stomach issue is going to kill me anyways. Who said the stomach issue was going to kill me anyways? It was an 8-year stomach issue that literally just of January this year. So when we get into this, you know, sometimes we can blame our seasons on, like, you know, we can say, oh, it's a waiting season. Oh, you know, it's a trial season. Oh, it's a desert season, a dry season. This is a refining season. But honestly, those seasons are not supposed to last as long as they usually do. Can I say that? They should not be lasting as long as they are. So let's identify, you know, sometimes we can even pinpoint. Like if you're thinking of your situation right now and you're thinking, yeah, dude, you don't even understand what season, like you don't understand what I'm going through. How long have you been in that? Because it's not a judgment when I say how long have you been in that. It's a realization. And then let's tune in because we're going to get some practicals on how to get out of it. Because it's a difficult task, but this is where we start wading, pushing through water, okay? So we can blame it on, church hurt. I have a lot of church hurt that I can blame a lot of problems on. Well, you don't understand my church hurt. You don't understand what this person did to me. You don't understand these things. You don't understand why they fired me from this job, or you don't understand. You know, there's so many different things. We can blame our seasons on those things, but none of that helps because that's a lens again. So there's different lenses. Our freedom, I'm going to read it because I specifically wrote this. The key to our freedom and our health is in what we choose to see, how we choose to act in it, and who and what we partner with in that season. Okay, freedom and health in what we choose to see, how we act, and who and what we partner with. So we have to be careful because the enemy is really, 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 really tactful. You know, we actually, in some Christian circles, we say that the enemy is but a bug under our foot. And God gives us the power to overcome him. But honestly, in some Christian circles, we kind of underestimate the enemy's tactfulness. So we can say he's a bug, but then what lies are we agreeing with? Because if you attack me verbally, if you come at me and you're just tearing at me, but I am whole on the inside, you are only scratching the surface of me. But if you corrupt and tear me from the inside, you will devour the entire being of me. So the enemy is very tactful in getting to the inside and devouring until he takes the outside too. Okay, it says, 1 Peter 5:8, I have it on the screen, New King James, be sober, be vigilant, because your adversary, the devil, walks about like a roaring lion, seeking whom he may devour. So what he is doing when he's walking about is he's just inserting different lies. He'll insert things. And if we choose to believe them or, sense it out, then it's a person that he might be able to devour because he's working from the inside out. If we can strengthen the inside, all he's got is scratches on the outside. You see, you guys are tracking with me here? So what are unhealthy lenses that we have? Because we have to be really careful. These lenses change the game, and we do not want the enemy to devour or scratch. So the first one, I would say justification, blame, rejection. This is a lens because the moment I feel rejected, I now have an idea of what everyone thinks about me all the time. This is a lens that we have. So blame. Blame can look like, do you know what they did to me? Do you know what they did to me? This is a lens because now I'm saying, no. Like justification, now that if you know what they did to me, I am able to push back. I'm able to stand off guard. I'll tell you what, I served faithfully in a church for several years. I loved my church. We called it living at church, sleeping at home, because that's what we do when we serve. This church, though, it got really hard. A lot of things crashed all at once on me. And I felt all of my mentors, all of my people, they started, I was telling them no, this is happening. And they were like, it's not happening the way you think it's happening. And I was like, no, we're literally this is happening with me. And I'm not lying. I'm not this is real. And they were like, no, it's not happening. And I'm like, are you guys? So I started feeling like I was going crazy. I literally started feeling like I was going crazy. And so then, my leaders, they wanted, for years, they were asking me to be a leader at this ministry, and I was putting it off because I never felt like I was supposed to be a leader. And then this last year that I was at this church, I was just trying to make it through. I didn't want to look like I was running. My pride was in the way of just walking out. My parents said, Abby, your season is done with them. But I was going to prove that I could stay because we get real prideful sometimes. And it wasn't about my health, it was about my pride now. And so I was going to stay. So I decided I was going to go into this ministry. And I had for a couple years, I had a hard time with these two girls. Petty stuff when you're 21. If you date one guy and the other two are irritated, it causes problems. Okay, so this is the problem I had years ago with these girls. But they were still angry with me that we weren't even dating anymore. So I had went in for my interview to be a leader, and she did the whole leadership thing. And these two girls they've been leaders for years. And she, I tried to take these girls out for lunch. I tried to take them out for coffee, all these different things to try to help this situation where they're just irritated with me. I go into this meeting with this leader. She was my counselor. She was someone I went to talk. I cried with her every week. She was someone that I felt like really loved me. I went in, and she's the head leader, and we have our interview to be a leader. Every other leader was like, "We're so excited to have you, Abby. Like, we've been begging you for years." And she was like, "Well, Abby, I can't let you on the team if you have discord with these two girls." And I was like, "You know the whole situation." I said, "You know that they cornered me in the kitchen. You know that they, have pushed me out of groups. You know that they've done all these things." I said, "I've told you, I've cried with you about it." And she said, "Well, I'm not going to allow strife on the team. So if you can't get over your frustration and your anger and bitterness with them, you're not on the team." And I left so hurt. I just cried in my car, and I said, "Mom, after 5.5 years, my character is still the one in question." I'm telling you, rejection sets in a second, and then it only grows into every other part of your life over time. Okay? So that rejection started a whole spiel of rejection. I sat in the front row, but I started moving to the back. By the end, all of my mentors and leaders, the people that loved me, they were loving on other people, and they didn't even see me anymore. And I felt so exiled. I got so sick. I was on emergency IVs because I couldn't handle life. It was so bad. So my justification after I moved, I thought that my church hurt stayed at my old church. Your church hurt follows you. Your pain follows you. Your rejection follows you. Your anxiety, your fear, it all follows you. So when I moved home to try to recover in 2020, right before, it was 2 weeks before my dad died, I moved home. I could not step foot in church. I didn't want to talk to people. And I felt like everybody was fake. Fake. Everybody who said they loved me, it wasn't real. But you guys, it was a lens. I carried my lens, and I had partnered with the lies that people weren't for me. I partnered with the lies that everybody leaves. I actually already had the everybody leaves lie, because when I was 7 or 8 or 9 or something, my grandma, she wasn't my real grandma, but she was like my grandma. She had left our church. We had a church split, which just means half the church decided they didn't like the way the pastor was leading, and they just tore the church in half. It is a very painful process. My grandma left with them. And I remember at 9 or something, I asked her, I was at her house, I said, "Grandma, why aren't you coming to church anymore?" And she said, "Well," and she thought about it for a second, and she said, she's like, "Abby, she's like, I'm just getting really old." She's like, "It's really hard for me to get out now." She said, "I can't come to church every week now." That was a really good answer. So I was like, "Oh, okay." But in the following weeks, I remember, we knew that this other half of the church that decided they didn't want to be with us anymore had started a new church. And she walked out of that building, and I sobbed instantly. I heard, "You were never good enough for her to stay." I partnered with that lie, so I carried that lens. So then when the church hurt happened, it was like, when you go to the doctor and the eye doctor, and he keeps putting the lenses and it just keeps getting worse. A second lens went on. So now I believe 2 lies. Okay? So we have justification, which just says, "You know what? I don't have to be in church because they hurt me. This church will hurt me too." So this lens of justification, blame, or rejection, do you know what they did, is actually going to infect every part of my life. I didn't trust my coworkers. I didn't trust anybody. I didn't want my mom to tell me anything. I was combative because I wasn't going to let her speak to me. The second one is, it actually runs right into it, self-acclaimed righteousness. This is a real lens, guys, because when we get hurt, we put up walls, and then we decide that we don't need them anymore. I'm too good. I don't need to go to church. I have Jesus. That's all I need. Is that not a real thought that people have had? Who needs to go to church? They hurt me anyways. They're all full of fakes anyways. The most hypocritical people, this is true. You do find some of the most hypocritical people in church. But it's because in church you feel like you have to look good. No, when did church change from being on your last leg to having everything together and not having to share anything with the people around you that are supposed to be doing life with you? You know what? We went out and preached, and we were like speaking to people, and this very adorable woman was out there, and she's older. She's probably in her 80s. She has lived some life. We heard a lot of rough stories from her. We tried, her friend was talking and engaging with us, but she was really getting angry. And so then when they looked at her and they said, "Can we talk to you?" She was like, "You are not going to tell me to forgive my ex-husband." She said, "He was abusive. He hurt me. He was terrible." She said, "I will never forgive him." And she started sobbing and started walking away. So then Ashley and I were there. We were not in that conversation. So we see this poor woman crying, walking. So we turn around, and I'm thinking, oh, we should go help her. And then, someone had said something about her, and they're like, "Oh, I think she needs prayer." I would never say that in front of someone. Go pray for her. She needs it. Like, ugh. But, Ashley and I turn around to see her, and she's like, "Don't pray for me." She's like, "Don't come talk to me." And then she left. This is self-acclaimed righteousness. They don't deserve my forgiveness. But who does unforgiveness actually hurt? Ourselves. Everybody's heard it. I'll repeat it again because, it's like a great life lesson. But unforgiveness is like drinking poison and hoping the other one dies. You guys have heard that? This is a lens because all it does is corrupt us more and more and more. All it does is corrupt us. Because now they don't deserve my forgiveness. I don't have to be with anybody but the Lord. None of you need to know my problems because Jesus knows them and that's all he need. That's all I need. I don't need anybody else. I can do this perfectly well on my own. Who has believed these things? I have. Yeah, I cut everybody out. Before I moved here, oh my goodness. You guys, I was begging God to kill me. You can bet that I did not hang out with people. I had cut myself off from everyone in an effort to protect the last of what I had. I had stopped going out. I stopped talking to people. When people asked me how I was doing, I was fine. Married men know fine is a code word. Right? Single men should know fine is always a code word. Self-righteousness, man. The Lord just hit me with that the other day. He's like, "You still got some of it, Abby." I was like, "Well, we're working on so many things at once. Got a little piece of everything over here." All right, so the next one is disheartened, hopeless, tired. It is a lens. I'm tired. How are you today, Abby? I'm tired. I'm tired of pushing through. I'm tired of trying. A heart that is sick, it makes everything else sick. What's the verse? Think of the verse, Tom. There's another one. It's hope deferred. Hope deferred makes the heart sick, makes the whole body sick. So when I say I am disheartened, I can't do this anymore. I'm so done fighting. No one sees me. No one actually sees me. I can walk into a room and I feel like no one watched me walk in, and no one cares that I walked out. No one knows what I'm going through. I am completely alone. You guys, these are the things that the enemy puts inside. This is the inside. This is the warfare. It goes inside, and if you accept it, you have partnered with these spirits of disheartenment, hopelessness, tiredness, fatigue. Would anyone even notice if I was gone? Would they even care? Let's jump into fear and anxiety, and shame is the last one. There's so many more, but these are the top 4 that I really felt like were pertinent. So, this is a rough one. Okay. All right, I'll just share it. 9 years ago, I had gotten an infection. I went on a missions trip, and I got an infection in my foot, and it was a very, very easy fix. This is a very terrible story, so just FYI. But it has changed things. I have partnered with anxiety since I was little. You know, in high school I had panic attacks at night, but my parents were pastors. I was trying not to put more on their plate. They already had a lot. So I would have anxiety attacks at night. I'd jump out of my bed. I'd forget who I was, where I was, and I couldn't feel my body. And I'd be running through my house in the middle of the night, shaking, trying to get feeling back in my body, and then trying to remember who I was. My name is Abby Stutzman. I am this age. I live with my family. They're here in the house. It was terrible. I struggled with so much in my mind. But, I want to have a whole ministry over ministry kids because it's a real thing. But anyway, so I had partnered with anxiety a long time ago. So I already had this lens. I already had the lens of fear. Okay? I partnered with that spirit of fear. So it was with me. So 9 years ago, I got an infection in my foot. Very easy fix. It was just like a little bit of sand and a cut. Super easy. But they had said, we were working with the hospital team, and they had said, don't, wash your hands and stuff. Like, these people have a lot of diseases. And so I didn't want them to, fix my foot in Haiti because I didn't want to get a disease. I was, in 10th grade. What does that make me? 15? So I waited till I got home. My mom took me into the doctor's office, and the doctor, this was an insane encounter. This should have never happened. But because I had partnered with the spirit of fear, my lens was already fear. So anytime anyone says anything, I would have this spirit of fear, and I'd get super scared, right? I was very fearful of pain. So the lady said, she's like, we can fix this. Basically, what we're going to do is jam a needle in between your toes. Literally, it was a cut. At 27, I would have said, all you have to do is just cut this little piece off and put some Neosporin on it, right? But she made this real dramatic. Again, my lens, so maybe it wasn't even as dramatic as I remember. So she's like, we're going to stick this needle in between your toes. It's going to numb everything, and then I'm going to cut half your toenail off, and we're going to, And so then I just remember I'm looking at my mom, and then I look at her again, and I feel like I'm going to start crying. I'm 15. I said, is it going to hurt? And she said, oh, yeah. She's like, it's going to hurt so bad. And I looked at my mom. I said, Mom, I said, can we try the medicine first? And she was like, okay. She's like, can we try the medicine? And the lady's like, she looks at my mom, and then she looks at me, and she's like, you can try the medicine. She's like, but if it doesn't work, you'll be right back in here, and we're going to do what I said. And I remember I had this I felt like I was going to throw up. I was like, oh, my gosh. I tried the medicine, and then, on the way out, she said, you make sure you come back in, because if you get a black vein that goes up your leg, she said, if it reaches your heart, it'll kill you. And I'm not kidding you. That set such a spirit of fear over me, because I had already had that spirit of fear, but it came in hard. So what happened after that was I took the medicine, and I am praying to God that it works because I didn't want to go through this. I take the medicine and it doesn't work. And it's actually the infection's getting worse. But I could not go in. I couldn't. So then when my mom asked me 2 weeks later, hey, did it get better? I was like, I would just avoid the question because I didn't want to lie. So I was avoiding the question. I'm like, oh, okay, hey, by the way, I took out the garbage. And then I'd leave, She kept asking me. So now it's been a year. And she, they're forgetting about it. It got to the point where I had to start lying. Abby, did you ever take care of your foot? Yeah, it's done. Abby, did you ever take care of your foot? My grandma is now asking me. This went on for 9 years. But I'll tell you, I've never had so much grace on people who are dealing with anxiety and fear because it is paralyzing. Paralyzing. Where I would tell anyone else, just go in and get it taken care of. You guys, I know you understand. When it's your own anxiety and it's your own fear, it will stop you from everything. Okay? I was so terrified. I remember every day I checked for a black vein going up my leg. I would not remove my shoes. I was living in a discipleship house a couple years after I got the infection. And so it had been years by this point, like 3 years. And I was sleeping in my jeans because it hurt to change my jeans. And it was a big process. And I started getting, so all of this is happening. And so then everyone's joking, they're like not making fun of. They're just kind of laughing like they tell everyone, Abby sleeps in her shoes and jeans. But they don't know why. They didn't know what I was dealing with. So things to us are so paralyzing. By that point, shame had set in. It was too long. I had gone too long. Now I couldn't tell anyone. But whose lie was that? I had now partnered with the spirit of shame, agreeing that, yes, it's been too long. So you guys can be going through something, and it's been too long that you've been dealing with it, so now you can't share it. That is a lie. But shame will keep you where you are. It will keep you stuck. I got to the point where, it had been like, the 9th year, 8th year, 7th year, whatever. I was having a lot of different issues because of this thing. I couldn't go to different things. I had to make up reasons why I couldn't swim. I was telling people I was sick when really I just couldn't go because they said you'd have to take your shoes off in that person's house. This was a life thing. This was a life thing that nobody knew about in my family. I had then, because I had partnered with anxiety only gets worse. I became so germophobic, I couldn't even touch myself. I couldn't touch my clothes. I got to the point where I couldn't touch doors. I couldn't touch anything. Guys, this is what anxiety does. Untreated will only grow. Shame, depression, all of it. By the 8th year, I'm writing letters to my family to tell them that I love them because I was going to die, which I then agreed that I was going to die. And so that lens of death I have now partnered with the spirit of death. I'm going to die from something, and it's going to be early. There's so many, you partner with things. If you agree on a lie, you have partnered with that lie. Every single time. I partnered with death when I agreed I'm going to die from this. And then, I started planning my funeral. I started cleaning up my room to make sure that if I died in my sleep, my parents wouldn't have to go through everything. I wrote letters telling every single person that I loved them so that and I put them in a place where they could find them after I died. I had gotten to the place where I thought I was really going to die. There was a point, though, where I decided I'm just going to do one Hail Mary. and I scheduled with a surgeon. This is crazy. I scheduled with a surgeon, like a foot orthopedic surgeon, because I knew that he was going to have to cut my leg off, because your anxiety will take you there as well. Will it not? Everything is a bigger deal. You know, they showed a light on a teddy bear, and on the screen, the teddy bear's shadow looked like a monster. And when they turned the light on, it was a teddy bear. Your anxiety will always look that big, when your anxiety is really only this small. But it has the power to look that big and to change your trajectory. So I finally decided I'm going to do one Hail Mary to save my life. And he's going to have to cut off my leg. I'm not going to tell any of my family I'm going in. They'll just see me without a leg later, is what I had decided. I thought that would be the best course of action. So after 9 years of being paralyzed and anxiety, every time I'd even try to schedule an appointment, I would hear this: you can't tell the doctor. You can't tell them. Do you know what they'll say to you? Do you know what they'll think of you? And I'd cancel those appointments for years. This is what anxiety does. You can't talk to that person in your church. You can't tell your friend who's been calling you, your friend who's inviting you out, you can't go with them. You have been isolated too long. You are still so broken. You are still so hurt. You think you can make new friends? You think you'll be able to keep those people? You think after they actually know you, they'll want to be with you? You guys, these are all paralyzing lies. Paralyzing lies. So I went in and I was like, I'm either going to die or get my leg chopped off. These are my two options. So let's just try the leg chopping and then see, we'll see. So I go in and the doctor, so nice. I wish he was in Seattle. I might just drive back to visit him. He's so great. I walk in and he's like, the lady's like, all right, what can I write down to tell the doctor? And I said, I'd like to tell the doctor. And she's like, well, I have to write something down to tell him why you're coming in. And I said, I have an infection. And he was like, and she's like, okay, sounds good. So she like writes it down. And so I go in and I'm like sitting in the chair and I'm trying not to cry. I'm losing it so bad, but I'm fighting my anxiety. He comes in, he's like, all right. He's like, hi, I'm so-and-so. He's like, you must be Abby. And I'm just looking at him and he's like, great. He's like, why don't you take your shoe off and we'll see what we're dealing with. Instantaneously sobbed. I just started sobbing uncontrollably. And he, a little alarmed, if, that doesn't usually probably happen with his patients. I'm sobbing and I said, I am so sorry, but this will be the first time in 9 years that I've taken my shoe off in front of anyone. And that anyone would see my foot. And it was this moment of breaking. It was a fighting moment. So I took off my shoe and I took off my sock with gloves because I was already like so germophobic by this point. And he looked at my foot and he's like, oh. And I'm like, yeah, you're going to have to cut it off. Just chop it off. Like, let's schedule the surgery. Take me in. Am I going to live, doc? These are the things I'm thinking. And he's like, can I see the other foot? And I was like, there's nothing wrong with the other foot. And he's like, you said the infection's in this foot? And I was like, yeah. And he's like, there is no infection in this foot. And I was like, and I mean, it hurt. There was definitely he could tell that there was something wrong. Like he had to, fix it and stuff. But he was like, you don't have an infection. And I was like, I have had an infection on and off for 9 years. Now I'm like defensive that he's thinking I don't need my leg cut off. I'm like, chop it, doc. I've had an infection for 9 years, And he was like, no. He's like, you might have had an infection at one point. He's like, but your toenail had died. He's like, that's all it is. He said, so let me fix the toenail. So he just shapes up the toenail and it looks so nice. And he's like, you're good. And I was like, I'm good? And he's like, yeah. He's like, you are fine. I walked out of that doctor's office like, I'm fine. Hey, I'm chill. But we partner with these things and they're so big. You guys, 5 minutes before that, I was dying and was going to lose my leg. 5 minutes after you are just fine, I'm living my best life. I was like, he's like, you can go swimming. I was like, I can swim? I haven't swam in 9 years. I'm living my best life in a 5-minute change of my lens. Okay? So, why do we put on these lenses? It's our control. It is the only reason we take a lens. You hurt me, I'm going to control the last of what I have. You walked away from me, I'm going to keep everybody at a distance because nobody's walking away from me again. Oh, you're stressing me out? This anxiety is causing me problems? I am going to put myself in a bubble so that anxiety can't hurt me any more than it already is. I would rather sit in my anxiety here than have any more. You get what I'm saying? I would rather sit here in my pain than get any more from you. I am going to control my situation. When we anchor in our own control, we are allowing fear, depression, confusion, hopelessness, pain, etc. Add your own tags to that list to drive our car. I had a moment with the Lord like a couple months ago. I was like, all right, God, like this is such a good day. Let's go on a drive together. That's when I talked to the Lord. And he said, Abby, he said, you love driving your car. I am driving all the time. And I said, I do love driving my car. And he gave me a verse, Matthew 6:24. No one can serve two masters. And I was like, yeah, I've heard it. And he's like, yeah, you have heard it. No one can serve two masters. But he said, I'm going to put this in a way that you can understand it. He said, you love to drive your car, but you are only a mortal being. You are a human being. You will never be able to drive your car because you are mortal. So he said, if you are not driving your car, because you literally can't, if you are not driving your car, and I know that I have not been driving your car, who has been driving your car? And the Lord showed me that my fear and anxiety have been driving. The enemy had been driving my car and telling me that I was driving. That is my control. The enemy's tactic is to make it feel like I am in control and that I am driving. But if I know that I cannot drive, then really, who was driving? You know, that actually scared the living daylights out of me. Because if God has not been driving, I would not allow God to take control. And if I thought I was in control, who actually was in control? So I want to go with this quote: a boat in the harbor cannot be steered. It must get into the wind to gain direction. It cannot be steered tied to the dock. So how do we get out of all of these feelings that we've talked about? How do we get out of all of these lenses? Matthew 34. I don't know why I put Matthew. Is it Matthew? Psalms. It should be Psalm. Why did I write Matthew? It might say Matthew up there. Oh, no, she did it. Oh, Kaylee. You guys, I just want you to know that Kaylee is like the greatest human being. Like, this girl, I send her Matthew saying, you have everything you need from me. And she changes it to Psalm to save my butt. She's great. She also is like running everything back there while Salvador's gone. So that's great. Oh, and there's someone back there, maybe. I see another head. Oh, Quentin's helping out. Anyways, Psalm 34. So these are tactics on how we get out of our own situation. These are the practicals. I will bless the Lord at all times. His praise shall continually be in my mouth. My soul shall make its boast in the Lord. The humble shall hear it and be glad. Number one, I want to say seek and praise the Lord through your situation. I will bless the Lord at all times, through pain, through suffering, through my anxiety, through my rejection. I am going to bless the Lord. I am going to praise him regardless. There got to a point I said, God, after it was 9 months after my dad died, I said, you either let me die now or let's get some people saved because this is all that matters. And God started that train. He told me to move to Minnesota. Thank goodness for only 4 months that I was there. Oh, God bless me. Okay, I went to Minnesota 4 months. That was enough time. It was cold. It was snowing. I was done. So he went, and in 4 months, he had broke the depression of begging for death off of me. I had been begging him to give me an answer on why he let my dad die, and he answered me when I was in a contrite and humble spirit. I sought the Lord, and then I started praising him in that pain. He told me to come back to Washington to work on getting healed from my stomach condition and to dissolve my anxiety. And for the last year and a half, he has been working on that with me. These are the points that I learned. And then I'm going to give you a couple short little points on what God is doing while I'm doing these things. So when you have something that we've already talked about, seek and praise the Lord. The next one, verse 3. Oh, magnify the Lord with me, and let us exalt his name together. Together. Number 2, get around other people that will praise with you. Be vulnerable. Share with others. Magnify the Lord together. My life sucks. Oh, your life sucks? Oh, let's get together and praise the Lord. It's so great. Number 4, verse 4. I sought the Lord, and he heard me and delivered me from all my fears. They looked to him and were radiant, and their faces were not ashamed. This poor man cried out, and the Lord heard him and saved him out of all his troubles. The angel of the Lord encamps all around those who fear him, and he delivers them. Number 3, we've already said, seek and praise the Lord through it. Get around other people. Number 3 is fix your focus. What is my focus? Is my focus going to be blaming the people that rejected me and hurt me? Is my focus going to be my justification and self-righteousness? Is it going to be my disheartened, hopeless, and tired state? My fear and anxiety and shame? Is my focus going to be that I was going to die in that season? I had partnered with death, and so then when my foot was okay, I hadn't broken the partnership with death and the spirit of death. So then when I got this stomach condition, this must be the thing I'm going to die from. Until we break these focuses off and until we unpartner, they will follow you. I have brought partners. I have knit myself together with the spirit of death, with the spirit of fear, with all of these things. I need to check myself and unpartner with all of these things. It took me a year and a half to unpartner with death, unpartner with fear, unpartner with anxiety, unpartner with the spirit of rejection, unpartner with disheartenment and hopelessness, isolation. I had to unpartner with those things. The way you unpartner is, God, I focus on you. Show me where I partnered in this the first time I partnered with it. Let's pull it from the root. Where were you in that situation? Where were you when I needed you and they rejected me? Oh, you were there? Oh, you were holy. I'm telling you what, we do prayer ministries, I did them with my family's church, and we asked the Lord, where were you? Where were you in this situation when it was happening, in this hopeless situation? God will actually show where he was. He will tell you, he'll give you a picture, he'll give you a feeling and emotion. When you know that God was there, you can unpartner. I break the hold of anxiety over little girl Abby who felt so alone in that moment. This is what we do. We fix our focus. Now, verse 8. Oh, taste and see that the Lord is good. Blessed is the man who trusts in him. Oh, fear the Lord, you his saints. There is no want to those who fear him. The young lions lack and suffer hunger, but those who seek the Lord shall not lack any good thing. Number 4 is start waiting. Waiting is the action of staying where one is, delaying action until a particular time and until something else happens. We are not waiting for our situation to change. We should not be waiting. We are wading with a D, which the definition is walk with effort through the water or another liquid or viscous substance. We are walking with effort. We are pushing on. So this happens in baby steps. Get uncomfortable. Talk to someone and share part of your life. Take a baby step and go out to coffee with someone. Take a baby step and step out of your isolation. Take a baby step and do something different. Shift what your life is right now. If you have a lot of paralyzing anxiety, take a baby step and tell someone else about it. That is not a baby step, actually. That is like a full-on leap. But to tell someone, it will break things off of you. I was in the ER June. I was in the ER in June. They thought I'm still having some stomach stuff. They thought I had appendicitis. And so I went in and I knew I was going to get a CT scan, but they decided they were going to do it with contrast. I have had contrast in the past, and if any of you have had it, they put an IV with iodine and they just flood you real quick, and then all of a sudden your body gets real hot, and sometimes you get woozy and feel like you're going to throw up, and you're like peeing your pants. None of that happens, but it feels like it for like a minute. Here is the problem. In June, this was June, 2 months ago, I am laying in this bed, and I had gotten to the point, I was like, I can't do it. I can't do it. I've had the IV. My anxiety blew this thing out of proportion. When the iodine goes in, my whole body starts spinning. Everything is, I'm like losing it in this thing. They come to take my blood before they can do the CT, and I wouldn't even let them take my blood. I was freaking out. I was like, literally, I called, I was calling my mom. I was like, I'd rather die. Like, I'm going to just take me home. If I have appendicitis, it's going to burst and kill me. I'll just die. Guys, this was June. This was 2 months ago. I'm like, just let me die. Like, I'll just die. I would rather do that than go through this. And the doctor's like, it's literally only going to be like 3 minutes at the most. He's like, but really just a minute. And then all of it goes away. The feelings go away. And I was like, I can't do it. Like, I'm crying. And the doctor's like, you don't have to stay here. I sat in there for like an hour sobbing. And I'm like, I stayed in the hospital because I knew I needed it, but I wasn't going to do it. I could tell by the end of that hour, they came in several times and said, you can leave. We are not holding you here. And I said, I am trying to do this. By the end of that hour, I knew there was nothing in me that was going to make me get this CT scan. I did not have the strength to do it. There was no way I was going to get it. I hung up on everyone I was on the phone with. I laid in this bed, and I turned on worship music, and I started praying in my prayer language. And I said, Jesus, whenever I meet with Jesus, we go to a little boat. We're fishing in a boat because it's like the most peaceful thing I can think of. And so Jesus had told me earlier, he said, anytime that we want to talk, we're just going to sit in this boat. So I went back into the boat. I closed my eyes. I started praying my prayer language, and I went back to the boat. I said, you said life was going to be fun. He had just told me this a couple months ago. He said, I want to give you life to the fullest. Will you trust me to lead you there? And I said, I can try. And he got this big smile, and he said, all right. He said, that's good enough for me. Let's walk to where we get your life back. And I said, yes. But in this moment, I'm sitting there. I said, God, where are you? You said that I would have life to the fullest. You said that this would be good. I'm in the ER. I am in the ER sobbing, wanting to die. I would rather die right now. And I'm like, Jesus. And all of a sudden, he's like, Abby, he grabs my arms, and he says, look at me. And I look at him. I'm like, I'm looking at you. And he said, no, look at me. He said, in the eyes. He got really serious because every time I met with him on this boat, he was so chill. And then he got real serious. So he grabs my hands. He said, look at me. And I said, I'm looking at you. And then all of a sudden I look down and there's a hole in the boat. Water's coming in and I'm sinking. I'm like, Jesus. He grabs me, pulls me up, sits me back in the boat in this little canoe. And he says, look at me, Abby. This is all happening as I'm like, my eyes are closed and I'm supposed to get the CT scan. He's like, look at me in the eyes. And he's just pointing. And then he holds my hands and I'm staring into his eyes. And he says, just focus on me. As soon as he said that, this intense peace just landed on me. And I stopped crying. And then all of a sudden, all this reassurance came in, and my anxiety was gone, and rationality came back. It is 1 minute of iodine in your body. 1 minute. It wasn't as bad as you thought it was last time. Last time you just thought you were peeing your pants. You might have gotten a little nauseous. It was 1 minute. You can do this. You are able to handle 1 minute of discomfort to make sure nothing is wrong. So they came in, they took my blood. I was totally at peace. I was totally fine. When I got into the CT room, I told the lady, I was like, don't put the iodine in yet. I haven't started praying. And she was like, okay, you just keep praying. And I was like, good. I'm like, I'm going to pray out loud too. You guys are all going to hear me. So I'm just praying. I said, God, I just asked that I wouldn't even feel it. I asked that it would be amazing. Guys, this has been like an hour and a half in the ER. I am tired. It's midnight. So I go in and she's like, I was like, only as much as I need. Do not flood my body. And she's like, yeah, no problem. I'm like, God, I thank you that you're here. I always say that. I thank you you're here. As I'm going into the CT, she does it, breathe in, hold your breath, all these things. And then I was like, all right, are you putting it in yet? And she's like, oh, I already put it in. And I was like, oh. And then I just got a tiny bit warm, barely. And then I came out of the CT scan and she's like, you're done. And I was like, wow. Oh my gosh. But you guys, I realized there was no way in my strength I was getting that CT scan. My anxiety was too much. When I allowed the Lord into my situation, his strength and power that I partnered with changed the game. It changed the game. So, Psalm 34, verse 18, the Lord is near to those who have a broken heart. He saves such as have a contrite spirit. Contrite just means humbled by your own failures. A contrite spirit is someone who says, I can't do this. God, there was no way I was getting that CT scan. You came through and all of a sudden I was like jolly and praying for everybody. He saves such with a contrite spirit. Many are afflicted of the righteous. Many are the afflictions of the righteous, but the Lord delivers him out of them all. He guards all his bones. Every part of my life he guards. Every single part of my life he guards. Not one of them is broken. Evil shall slay the wicked, and those who hate the righteous shall be condemned. The Lord redeems the soul of his servants, and none of those who trust in him shall be condemned. When you're going through and you're fixing your focus and you're doing all the things that we already talked about, this is what God is doing. God is checking your attitude in what you're willing to do. He's checking your attitude. He's assessing where your control is. What level of control am I willing to give up? We call it give up and give over. Am I willing to give my control up and give it to the Lord? Am I willing to let him drive my car? And then he checks in when we're feeling fearful and doubtful that it's going to work. Gideon was leading an army. The Lord told Gideon, he told him, I want you to knock down this god in the center of your town, a god idol worship. And so in the middle of the night, Gideon went and knocked down the idol worship. And God said, all right, your attitude is one to trust me. He said, let's move forward. I want you to lead an army against the people that are coming against you. So then Gideon, he's like, all right, I got like so many men. And God's like, no, no, no. He said, I want to take you down. He's like, take them all down to the water. And he's like, and I'm going to tell you which ones to dismiss. Gideon's level of control was assessed here because God didn't tell him how he was going to dismiss them. He didn't tell him anything. He said, whoever I say to go, you send them home. Gideon's level of control had to be a manner that was, all right, whoever you say. Gideon's best friend could have been one of the ones that had to go home. He had to be okay with that. So he went down and God said, all right, I want you to send this many home. Gideon had a very few number left. God kept knocking him down because he wanted to see where Gideon's level of control was. Gideon's control was at a good level, a healthy level. So God was able to keep moving forward. He said, all right, let's go to war. Gideon was nervous. God could tell that he was nervous. Yeah, Gideon, I know this is hard. What I'm asking you to do is really hard. He said, I want to encourage you. Why don't you go down to the enemy camp tonight? I'm going to encourage you down there. Gideon goes down, and then one of the guys is like telling his friend, dude, I had this dream. He's telling him all about this dream, and he's like, man, the Israelites are going to overtake us. Like, they're getting so scared. Gideon was so encouraged. He ran back, woke everyone up, and they did it that night. So when you're going through this, you might not feel God right away, but I want to encourage you that God is in every part of what you're doing. It totally depends on your level of control. What are you willing to let go of or open up to or baby step into? What are you willing to cut partnership off of? And what are you willing to partner with? A boat in the harbor cannot be steered. It must get into the wind for direction.